Welcome to Climate Quickies, bite-sized nuggets of climate goodness from our TEDxLondon experts in under 5 minutes.
So this week we're joined by John Marshall, a climate marketeer and the founder and chairman of the Potential Energy Coalition, which is a non-profit that uses the power of marketing to develop new narratives, engage new audiences, and build demand for a better, cleaner, prosperous world. And John's going to be sharing with us not just his general kind of genius and expertise, but also the results of some really exciting new research that's come out.
Yeah, I worked as a management consultant and a marketing executive working for, the big brands in your fridges and your driveways and trying to get people to buy them and buy more cookies and buy more credit cards. So and then my son, I have 3 boys, and my son came home one day. He was taking a course at school about climate change, and he said, "Dad, you're not doing shit about climate change. You're selling shoes, or there's something more important out there."
Always the kids.
And so he pulled out an ad from an organization I will not name and said, "This isn't working." And he said, "You're in this business." And so he literally locked me in the house for a couple of days and said, "I want you to call all your friends who are in the marketing business, all the big advertising executives, and I want you to see what you can do." And so. And of course, my wife was in the room at the same time. And she's like, "Yeah, you got to do this." So we, it sort of started this cascade of phoning people up and saying, "Hey, if we brought better, if we started using the same tools and techniques that we have on in the commercial world to actually get people to care about the issue, would it work?" We're taking that skill that can be used for evil and we're trying to use it for good, and we're observing what people care about, and we're testing different messages, and we're trying to figure out how to get more people in the climate movement. And if there was one thing we learned about the whole thing, is just talk about pollution. Call it pollution. Don't call it emissions. Don't call it climate change. And it's, if you think about it, and this is what gets to getting the average person's head into this, because if you ask the average person, help fight climate change, they're like, "Oh no, how do I start? Can I have a difference?" But if you say we're not fighting climate change, we're fighting the polluters who are causing climate change, that seems a lot easier, right? And so you say, 70 or 100 companies are responsible for 71% of the pollution that's overheating the earth. People are like, "Oh, we can do that. We can actually talk to those 100 companies. Someone can call them up and we can put regulations on it." So it makes people feel much more relaxed. You can see it in the focus groups that you do when you say, well, there's a select number of organizations that do a tremendous amount of the pollution. If we deal with that, we can actually deal with the problem.
Yeah, because that's such a manageable goal, isn't it? That feels like an actual achievable target, to just focus your energy and your attention on 100 companies and be like, "Oh, let's just try and stop those guys from doing it."
Yeah.
If people are talking about climate a lot in their lives, what could they take away from your work? 3 practical tips.
Yeah. I mean, the simplicity, humanity, and accountability are the 3 territories.
Simplicity, humanity and accountability.
And so practical tip number 1 is just use just all the regular language. And so that basically means that when you have a press release from a climate organization, you need to rewrite it because it doesn't have any of that. And so go for simplicity. I mean, humanity is what does the person on the other end care the most about? Turns out the most uniting message is our kids. And then accountability is about we're all fighting polluters and pollution, and that's what climate is. So those tend to be the 3 guideposts that we use. And I think that's the case for everybody. On the humanity one, I have a more specific tip, and I particularly tell this to political leaders and people in the climate sectors. Whenever you're talking about climate change, within 5 or 6 words, accompany it with a consequence, so that people so it become relatable. So the climate change that caused the flooding in Pakistan, the climate change that caused the dramatic overheating, the climate change that burned up Maui, the climate change that's increasing your air conditioning bills.
Not a future consequence, but
not
something
a today consequence, but stick a consequence in there, because climate change is kind of a loosey-goosey weird thing. But make it the overheating and the floods, and make that there, and don't ever think that people are you got to activate that in people's heads, what they're actually thinking about.
Brilliant.
I think that's probably my big takeaway from this conversation. When you said that stuff about talking about pollution rather than talking about climate change, to me, that really sticks out as talking about an immediate issue rather than something that's just a potential idea of what might happen in the future. Because I think it really changes the way that people have to engage with the conversation, actually. What has been the most impactful or successful messaging that you've seen?
Well, I think we've covered a lot of the pieces of it. Having a really good messenger and talking about something that people really care about, and some messaging that comes from your community.
Thanks for listening to this quickie.
This episode was created by our superstar podcast team at TEDxLondon. Until next time,
stay curious.